Silver Eye Society.
Welcome to the Silver Eye Society podcast in our final October episode where we get some spooky ideas going, and we got something real spooky that's going to pop up on this screen for you, those of you that watch this podcast. We will be discussing the film you probably haven't heard of. I haven't heard of it. Absolution. It's from the 70s. Good old British horror. A little bit of an overlap with The Wicker Man that we recently covered. It's a great film. We're going to talk about like morality and the breakdown of morals and culture. Very Nietzschean stuff. But first, let me introduce to you why this podcast will probably never break out onto the mainstream. The word of the podcast and the word of the podcast host, Justin A.W. Belair.
Brought to you by Cyber Socrates. The word of the podcast, the word of the podcast. I'm a little concerned with the audio, given the fact that this Cyber Socrates, his beard is a little bit in the way. But you know what? We're going to do it anyway. Well. Confess, a verb. I'm not going to burden you with too much etymology this episode, in this festive season. But let's just say it means make an avowal or admission of a fault, crime, sin, debt, etc. One could confess to being late for recording the podcast. That would be something one could do if one were so desirous of confessing.
No, but I live beyond good and evil, so I don't need to confess anything.
Okay. So, cone, we know that, what that word means, right?
That's
throughout
right.
The year of the word.
Spanish, with. Con.
With, together, yeah. Plus fateri, to admit, akin to fari, speak. So it's speaking with, confess. I'm not going to give you any of the Proto-Indo-European roots this session, you know? It's too much.
No, it's too much.
Its original religious sense was in reference to one who avows his religion in spite of persecution or danger, but does not suffer martyrdom.
Okay. All right.
Go ahead.
Let's get into
Cyber
it.
Socrates got to fix this.
Yeah, you got to figure yourself out of there. Oh, that's terrible. Now that's horror. Okay. So here's the thing. This movie, I'd like to talk a little bit about the movie because no one has any fucking clue what we're talking about. This movie, Absolution, is kind of not well known. Like, I've never heard of it. What is it? It's British, right?
It is British.
It's from the 70s?
Yes,
which
1978.
Is great, like a great decade for film, okay? And for some reason, we've discussed this, but I think it's that things were still, there's still this quality of like artistry to films. It doesn't feel so commercial and industrial as everything does now. And this film really has that. There's actually a weirdness to the way that the story is told. And I think maybe this is why you'll feel, if you watched The Wicker Man and you watch this, you'll see that there is some continuity to it, though it might not be apparent exactly why. I think it's actually because that the way that the story is told, is a little bit odd. Like there are sometimes gaps and things don't seem to be explained, but they don't actually need to be explained, the things that are left out. So there's a weird dreamlike quality to both The Wicker Man and Absolution. I think it's probably because the screenwriter is the same. But this movie...
This is low energy. This makes me feel like drinking hemlock. Have you drank some hemlock on accident? Because this feels low energy. Get the energy going. Come on.
Have
your pumpkin spice latte? Because you seem like you're probably drinking pumpkin spice lattes over there with your low energy intro. What are we doing?
Listen.
Cyber Socrates is off the chain.
You're right. You know what? I sound like the guys that introduced this movie, because you can watch this movie for free on YouTube, but you'll have to get through, what is it, the Newcastle After Dark. So wait, is this the beer?
No. Do what?
Newcastle After Dark. That is the name of the podcast or whatever that presents this movie on YouTube for free, but isn't Newcastle a beer? Is this Newcastle sponsoring two dudes?
Newcastle in one word is a city, by the way, in England and or the UK. So let me correct all of your ignorance.
That.
Cyber soccer. Did you know that?
I don't think that they just randomly named the beer, like they came up with the phrase Newcastle. Like, how much more English could something sound? I think I got it.
Okay. Anyway, Newcastle is a city in England, northern part, and then also it's I believe I don't know why they fucking called it that. Why are you asking me why they called it that?
I thought
Castle
it was
Rock.
The beer. I thought it was sponsored by the beer or something. I was like, wow, Newcastle's surrealist. I don't know what this
Words
is.
mean different things sometimes.
Yeah, well, you should just watch it on YouTube. It's funny. The two guys that introduced the movie. It's great. I love it. I love this movie because it feels very different than everything that you normally watch. Okay, so whatever. Let's get into the morals shit. Because the whole point is that it takes place in what? A priest school? Where they teach kids to maybe become priests? Like a religious school or some shit. And it's what? What is the era? This got to be old. They don't even have electricity and shit.
No, they have electricity. It's obviously from the 19... Did you pay attention? What is wrong with you?
It doesn't look like they had electricity. It's
from the 1960s. The guy is a hippie in the forest on a motorcycle.
Right,
it's obviously... during the modern age. It's set in the 60s or 70s. Just sit back and...
No.
Why don't you just sit back?
Oh,
well, we need to
I'm sorry.
guide this ship into clear waters for a second. Because you're just misinformation everywhere.
I didn't know that priest schools were so modern. Sorry for getting the guy wearing a priest dress and the confession and the kids in their dorm rooms that are like decrepit or whatever in a castle. Sorry for mistaking the era. You know, it's so apparent that a priest school is modern. It's not.
You live in a fake city that is very new, and you've always lived in a fake city because Miami is also a fake city. You don't have any idea of how the world is actually older than 100 years ago. So yeah, England is an old place, and this is set during the time of electricity. But it is a Catholic school that it's a Catholic boys' school.
That sounds old. But anyway, yeah, you're right. I live in fake cities. LA is the oldest city I've ever actually lived in, and that says enough. So let us move on. Look, the problem in this film is morality to a degree. There was many problems in this film. So let's not analyze the film because, you know, people haven't watched it. We want to talk here about the basics in this film. So what happens is the priest is teaching a class and he's like, oh, as a priest, you can never confess. You can never say someone's confession. So if someone confesses to you and they're like, I murdered someone, you can't tell anyone. And so one of the students starts messing with the priest and confessing fake confessions that are terrible to mess with him, but also is doing terrible things at the same time. So it's really this twisty story about who is good, what is bad, and what steps must you take to right wrongs, and whether those steps are right in themselves. It's a very complex, like, moral gymnasium for the mind. What do you think, Justin?
I think that it would behoove you and viewers alike to read On the Genealogy of Morals by Friedrich Nietzsche.
Yeah, I would.
And then you would understand what's actually occurring in this film better.
Well, why don't you tell us, okay, from your bearded, costumed face, provide us some enlightenment instead of just condescending to our viewers. How about that?
Go check your video and make sure it's working still while I explain to the viewers the actual things that are happening. So you have a crippled kid, and he gets abused. He gets bullied by one of the main protagonists in the film. He gets bullied a little bit by the priest himself as well. He ultimately, spoiler alert, overthrows both the priest and his bully in a lot of ways. Basically gets his bully murdered through clever trickery. Now, how you say to yourself, how is he going to bring this into Friedrich Nietzsche? How is he going to bring this 1978 film back to Friedrich Nietzsche? How's Cyber Socrates going to do it? Prepare. You must understand the distinction between good and bad and good and evil that Friedrich Nietzsche makes in On Genealogy of Morals. Do you understand that distinction, or would you like me to explain it?
I'd like to hear it explained.
Nietzsche thinks that pre-Christian people, especially empires like Rome or Greece, lived by aristocratic virtues of good and bad, not good and evil. So in other words, a person of a higher standing would simply would look at a peasant or something like that, or someone of lower status, existence, and they wouldn't call them evil. They would simply call them bad. There are things that are good and there are things that are bad. I'm simplifying this. He sees that through the development of Christianity, an overturning of this, changing the good-bad distinction into the good-evil distinction. And by doing this, overthrows the previous hierarchy of pagan nobility. In this film, what happens is, and they do this, and this is where you get this concept of slave morality and master morality. In this film, you have the weakest person in the institution who can't physically defend himself, of course. He's abused, he's bullied by the structure. But using clever ideas and trickery, he's able to actually overthrow his enemies, the priest and the person who was bullying him.
Oh, yes, that's right. Because he is the weakest one in the entire film. Like, he's literally crippled. And it's interesting because he plays this character that's very meek and seems innocent, and the priest at the end is like, oh, you were the lost lamb or whatever, but he was not. And what do you think about that line, the priest saying you're the lost lamb? Is that the priest's final mistake? Is once again trying to foist this view of innocent, of good versus evil onto the character, because then the character shortly after that is like, no. And he shows that he's still devious in his last trick that he plays on the priest.
He does. Cyber Socrates was adjusting his beard. I didn't hear the beginning of your question, but basically, I'll also point viewers out to the very, very last scene of the film. There is why, and I'll ask you this question in the Socratic method. What does it mean where the crippled kid, after defeating his enemies, walks through the hallway whistling, and do you remember what he does? He straightens a picture. He there's a picture that is askew, and he orders it back into his straightness, right?
Yeah.
Why would they put that image in the film? Is it just to show him being nonchalant?
Is it a reordering?
I think it's a reordering of the hierarchy that existed.
He's the one that dictates what is in order now. He's the one that creates order.
Yeah.
Yeah, the weakest now sets the order.
So that was my take on Friedrich Nietzsche, on the genealogy of morals, and the film Absolution. There are some other questions we want.
Film, just briefly. What a great movie. I don't know.
There are some other questions we wanted to get to, which was you asked and I asked, and we all ask ourselves, trying to select this film. I'm a little concerned. Cyber Socrates is going to bring the beard down because I'm a little concerned the audio's be messed up.
All right.
This is questionable.
Well, just get rid of the full beard. You can keep
No.
it on your neck like that.
No.
This is
it's
hideous.
stays
That's
with
a
me.
real Halloween costume now.
That's right. I tried to find a different film. I scrolled through Amazon. I even logged into your Netflix account a few times looking for another horror movie for this month. And it made me depressed because everything looks
Fake.
fake. Everything looks fake. And that's why I settled on this kind of deep cut horror movie from the past. Now, the question is, if one agrees, why? Now, I have some theories of why. But if you would like to express some of your theories of why everything looks fake now, feel free.
Yeah.
Don't steal my ideas.
No, they were my ideas too. I noticed the same thing. It's one of the things that I
They're
loved.
mine.
It's one of the things I loved about this movie because there's such and I'm not just identifying the lo-fi quality of it. It's not just that the film is older and looks more handmade or whatever in that sense. There is just a more uniqueness to older films. Like it kind of seems like people really were creating more original things. And I'm not giving a reason for why that is. I'm simply making the observation because I really believe that the observation is valid. We can debate the reasons. And so I look at this film.
Well, that's what we're trying to do because I
Well-
already gave the observation. You're just restating it. So can we?
Well, when I say something, there's more validity to it because I don't have a beard hanging from my neck and like cyber
There's
glasses.
more volume to it. I don't know if there's more validity. But which is maybe the problem. You're the problem, basically. You're the Netflix of this podcast. It's just a bunch of stuff, but there's no substance to it.
Yeah,
So
I'm the funding and the celebrity name that they throw
the
into.
funding. Look at this mess. Listen, CGI is a possibility. It's possible that CGI has.
It's not this, because I don't
I think it's a little bit that.
Look at all those movies that you were looking through. They're not all CGI. A lot of them
I
are
bet
not.
almost every one of them has CGI aspects because it's just ubiquitous.
But
now.
this problem came before CGI.
Okay, continue.
When
did it hit?
I don't know.
Was it Y2K? Did Y2K destroy the film industry?
I don't think that it's just CGI. I think that's definitely part of it. Because when you look at films like this and older horror, you see how people had to really be a little more crafty to create the effects that they used. And I think that creativity, that the limitations that come from having to deal with the creativity that comes from having to deal with limitations really births unique art. And so I think that the fact that you don't have to contend with limitations, you just need a budget now, and then you can just CGI everything. I think that really, that allows for filmmaking to be made from a much less creative standpoint. And you see that. I think that ties in with what we both observe, which is a lot of contemporary film just seems commercial. It seems like a product.
You agree with me then? That's what you're doing, right?
Well, I'm saying
that CGI is.
I'm saying that's one thing, but I don't think that that's the only thing. I really don't think that that's the only thing because
I'll
think it's
offer
probably
some other ideas. Another idea might be, in terms of the British film industry, they really didn't have any money. Like, there's several actors in this film that if you read the Wikipedia article about it, it's like they became a welder afterwards because it was like that was it.
But
now,
this is what I was telling you. Didn't I say this? You steal my ideas. I said this exact thing. I was like, there was a time where artists had jobs. Like art really was not that lucrative. There were not these massive industries around it, or like pseudo art jobs where you could get a job not being the actual actor, but somehow you were like had all this bureaucracy and all these jobs that jumped up around the actor, around the musician. And so all this industry that's like popped up around the arts, I think it just drains creativity. It creates all these unnecessary restrictions and it creates a bottleneck and it slows things down. I think this kind of artist that like has a job, a normal job, and is then also doing their art, like this person to me, I feel like that's more, I don't want to make a trope of like, oh, the brilliant working class person. They just know. But I just feel like there's something that allows for more originality in that.
It's not, yeah, it's not about necessarily that it's always brilliant, because there's a lot of also just kind of bad movies that also
But it's
don't
bad
look
in
fake.
interesting ways also. That's the thing.
Sure,
you know?
there's that. But so, number one, Richard Burton, who is the main actor in this, the priest, he was a trained Shakespearean actor. I don't know how many trained Shakespearean actors are doing Netflix movies at this point. Maybe a lot. I don't know. But also, probably it sucks now. I don't know. He was like the child, like the 11th child in his family. His parents were like, his dad was like a miner or something, and his mom died really young. The point is, these people had harder lives, and it wasn't that long ago that
Oh my
people had really
God.
kind of hard lives.
Everybody is
And-
just kind of like a bitch now, is what it is, you know? Because think of also the schools. Even the schools now, you go to acting school, whatever art school you're going to, they're fake. The shit you're learning there, if you're not learning actual technique, they pad their degrees with a bunch of like theory bullshit that's just completely untethered to reality. And so you're paying a shit ton of money to go to these art schools to study fucking, you know, how to do CGI effects on the latest Netflix special about the pregnant man or whatever. And it's just people that are not tethered to the earth. It's like industry. It's all industry and bureaucracy and money and like delusion. And so I think that even now you go to these schools, because I have friends that are, you know, trained actors in that theatrical tradition, and they have already said that those schools are teaching bullshit, like that they're getting away from the hardcore theory and philosophy, and they're starting to edge more into this like, well, we're art is supposed to be activism. And it's like, okay, you've already like, I don't know, it feels like everybody's in a daycare, like we're just, the entire country is a fucking daycare, at least for the people that are doing art. We need poor
Right,
artists.
well, I mean,
Artists must be
but
poor. Oh fuck.
Well, so if you look at the people in this film, like they had difficult lives. Billy Connolly, who's the hippie on the motorcycle or whatever, he had a difficult life growing up. Richard Burton had a difficult life, and he was very famous back in the day, actually, but he was a hardcore alcoholic. He drank like 3 to 4 bottles of liquor a day and died at a very young age. But you see that in his face. You see like there's solidity to the actor in the role. When he's walking through in the beginning in his priest robes, it's like, that's a person, that's a human, with a lot of things going on, and really good actors can do that with even just the way their face looks. But we had one more topic that I thought we would touch on, but I think it's going to be too late, unfortunately.
What?
The idea of confession.
Oh, you're
and-
crazy. Don't stop it. No, it's 7 minutes. We're not even done with this shit about the movies being fucked. I really do think I want to see shit that is not glossy anymore. I don't want to see big budget movies. I don't want to see whatever the fuck, you know, that the board of directors decided is the right formula for a successful film. I want to see people that don't know what they're doing and haven't been to art school making films in their neighborhood with their friends. Like, I want to see things that
No, that's gonna fucking suck
real.
too.
But
That
they will
sucks
be
too. It can't
interesting.
be. No, it can't be that you don't know what you're doing, but that
A
you're
little bit
poor
you have
and then
to
you're gonna
know.
make. That no, you need to actually be devoted and good at something to create something good. It can't just be a bunch of hipsters running around with iPhones being like, "This is the new thing." Some of that
No,
might be good, whatever.
Not
but
that
listen,
either. I mean, no, it can't
but-
be like, you know, just vapid or whatever. But I mean, like, I like the quality of people directly interacting with the medium without having like all this industry around it. And I know that's very hard for film, because film really is one of the art forms that has so many different roles that people can play to put a film together. And so it's so easy for it to become such a massive industry and massive production. And it's not that there's anything wrong with that kind of collaboration, but I think that it can become so bloated that there seems to be something that drains the authentic, like more life-giving quality that you look for in art. I don't know, man. A lot of these movies that come out, they just seem sanitized. Then that's not all of them, though. There's, you see the things that A24 puts out. It's like that shit has life. Like I watch Midsommar, I watch Hereditary, all these things. The Witch. What is the other one that came out with the Nordic stuff?
The Northman, but
Northman.
we mentioned the same 4 movies every podcast for years, so there's a problem. There's serious problems. I look forward to the collapse of it all. But what?
I don't want to be in it. Well, okay, the collapse of the art industries,
so look,
that's
remaking,
will be fine.
The other issue is it's all just remaking stuff.
Yeah.
So they're just remaking things. This wasn't a remake. This film wasn't a remake. They didn't remake everything in the 1970s
what the
or
fuck?
the 80s.
What is the problem? And the thing is supposed to be that it's because, we know that this movie did well, so yeah, that's a safe bet. Let's invest hundreds of millions of dollars into it because we know it'll do good because it did good once. It's a timeless story, whatever. And it's like, I don't know, man. I feel like that's what the logic is that it's like some board of directors and investors hedging their bets. And so that's what it is now. Everybody's just remaking things because they feel like it's safer. But that, like, when you prioritize getting a return on investment, when you're creating a piece of art, you've already like sold a part of its soul at least.
And no, that's kind of like 90s liberal talk, because these people were trying to make money too when they made the movie Absolution. They weren't all like, hey, let's just throw money around and like running around and like not taking things seriously. There's something else going on, I think. And what exactly it is, I'm not sure. But wait, am I accidentally quoting a 60s song? There's something going on here. Cyber Socrates. I feel like that there is a lack of weight to performers, that there is a lack of life experience to performers. Like Billy Connolly in this film, he had a job before he became like a folk singer or whatever, but before that I think he was like some riveter or something in like a shitty Scottish like industrial town.
I don't even know what a riveter is.
A riveter is a person that rivets things. They put rivets, which is a bolt into the steel.
Oh, like Rosie the Riveter, like the little...
Right.
Okay, now I know.
Yeah. Okay, well, take us out. Cyber Socrates.
We are out. We have been out. And dear viewer, dear listener, if you enjoyed listening to the musings of Cyber Socrates in this episode, by all means, join us for our next episode. Subscribe, like, and leave us a comment. What do the people think? What do the people think? Because I know sometimes that it's very unpopular to be like, oh, art sucks, because it feels like you're just complaining, and it feels like every generation says that. But I think there's a problem. I think we can all identify there's a problem. I'd love to know people's ideas on why that problem exists. So, until then, we will see you on the next episode.